out there that I needed it, and now like I'm actually having to say people.
How do we make it this long without that?
But yeah, and again for me too.
I've got some music for Levi if he's up for doing some more.
My feeling by the end of all that time was,
So
you
I want to make sure I
create a
get it
structure,
to you or him
and then
today.
you step away. And if you've created the structure, and if you step away, people will do it for themselves, and they will have a more transforming experience if that happens. So it's hard to build a structure.
might be using it
about that. It's kind of also hard to then step away. Like recently I asked Doug, what would it look like if we had a lay-led participatory experience at church? Because I've never been to a church like this one. And we're playing with it. We've been kind of playing with it. We've been doing the community intentions. We do the housekeeping. Like, is it just that it takes the pressure off the leaders, or do the people have a better experience?
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing that,
and
like you saw the competitive, they have a better experience. It's more transformative. It's deeper.
Yeah, that's awesome. What are, specifically though, to bring back to you guys specifically, what are the areas in which you find yourself needing like support in general, like that this community can know about you, like this is how I can always come alongside this person in this way, because I think there's I've been in ministry or church groups for my whole life, right? And something that I often notice is that the leaders create the container for the people to have these spiritual experiences, and then they don't participate at all. They do not have the experience that they're providing for these other people. And part of that is just a lack of vulnerability or something like that. So what is a way that we can come alongside of you guys and support you in the process of supporting us?
Well, I think we are well positioned to do it, having come up through this community already, and already having really strong relationships and being a part of this community. It's not like somebody went out and found us from somewhere and is dropping us in, which is typically what happens in other churches. And so I feel to just continue these friendships and these relationships. I'm very open and honest with people about what's going on in my life. I think that's really important, not to put up some kind of facade that you're tough and you've got it all together, because who does? And I already feel very, very loved, beloved even in this community, and it's really such a gift.
That's awesome.
And this is why I'm your question, this is why I'm grateful that we have the self-awareness program and we have the Enneagram, because Sue's 8, I'm a counter 5, Doug is an 8, counter 8, so he leans into his 9. Jack, you're the poster child for a 4. Like I think a lot about the people at our church and the stories I hear and the needs and experiences. And a lot of that I need to do off by myself. I mean, I'm still a 5. I need to crawl back into my cave and contemplate. I mean, one thing I've learned over the last couple of years is I was a born contemplative. I was a contemplative by the time I was 2. And so one of the things that I think we need as people who want to be in these positions is to be known and accepted as a part of the
Well, good morning, people.
So I think everybody knows at this point that you're an 8. You're going to get
Good morning,
stuff
people.
done, and that's why you need that Monday to be Sabbath.
Well, good morning, people.
I'm going to sometimes show up.
There you go.
I'm going to
Hello, Holly. I have a reminder, Holly, that after I get back, you and I are going to get coffee someday. One of these days it's going to happen. Well, welcome this morning. If you are new today, I would like you to understand this is not what we do every week. It's kind of a special Sunday, so that makes us especially glad that you're here today. Now, before, in a moment, I'm going to tell you to stand up and go get some brunch, and then, whoa, look at Ender. Turn around. I have not seen that before. I mean, I've seen Ender a lot, but I have never seen that.
Yeah.
So,
And we
before I give you the instructions that I'm going to give you, I'm going to tell you, stand up, go get some food, come sit down, try really hard. I'll give you those instructions in a minute. I won't tell you the instructions I'm going to give you now. So before that, hit it, slide. A few things that are coming up in our community. Yeah, that's the one. Today, well, we don't even need to tell you about the Zoom because you're not on it right now. After we have our ordination ceremony, we're going to have a little panel on life story groups and form life story groups today. After that, there's going to be a drop-in self-awareness group down the hall. That's in room 209. Saturday, there's going to be an artsy group. Next Sunday, drop-in Enneagram group after church. And then the Sunday after that, centering prayer in the morning. And that Sunday, we're going to do Rise Against Hunger. The 25th will be a shortened service. As soon as we finish the shortened service, we will turn the chapel into a food assembly factory, and then we will pack together 30,000 meals. Now, we're doing it with Ridge Road, we're doing it with Midtown, and we're doing it with the Karen congregation, but even with everybody, we're still going to need lots of bodies. So last year we did it. It was a lot of fun. We worked together around packing tables. Folks got to know each other. Kids got to know adults. Folks from other congregations got to know each other. So I hope you'll come, and it'll help the planning team. Folks, if you register, and you can use the QR code, or you can go to the website to do that. Easter eggs. The children's team have also created an Amazon wish list, and all you have to do is go there and click and pay. If you go there and click and pay, the stuff that you order will automatically go to them, and then they'll take all that stuff and they'll put it in the eggs, and on Palm Sunday when we do our Easter egg hunt, they'll have full eggs and children will be happy. Would you deny children their happiness? I think you're not. So you can also use the QR code or go to the website for that, but also throughout the time we're brunching, the announcements will be scrolling through, so those QR codes will show up again. So now here's how we're going to brunch. In a moment, we're all going to stand up, we're going to go get some food, and then maybe when you come back and sit down, you mix it up.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Maybe you sit with somebody you weren't sitting with when you got here. Let's get to know each other. Are you ready? Let's stand and go, and put on some beads as you do it.
First half of the ordination year.
Yeah, first half of the ordination year. Right. So we're coming into,
Hi there.
We're going to do a more formal, like, you're ordained now, and you're going to be ministers in the Common Thread world. What does that mean? As far as, I would love to hear both of you guys talk about, like, what being a minister means to you, because I think in this community it's kind of, we're constantly messing around with terms and things, and up till this point we've had the minister guy, as Doug likes to call himself,
Right.
and you guys aren't guys, and you aren't, so yeah, what does minister mean to you guys?
For me, I spent 20 years in these classrooms in the basements of churches with refugees and immigrants as part of this program that happens in most states, but in North Carolina, it's a really strong program. So I had people from all over the world, from all ages, and increasingly over the 20 years, I got to the point where what I was doing started to feel more like ministering than teaching, but there were two problems with it. One was that I was the teacher with a capital T, so it felt like the relationships weren't as reciprocal as would be necessary if my own growth was going to keep happening in that capacity. And then second, of course, that's not what I was supposed to be doing. I was supposed to be teaching them grammar and stuff. So I got to the point where I started feeling what people call burnout, but I think was more like I wanted to have a more deeply connected and meaningful relationship with students, and I wanted to have it be explicit what we were doing there. We were forming a community, me and the students together, and we were helping each other along a journey that we didn't call the spiritual journey, but if you're a refugee to another country, a spiritual aspect is present in those classrooms. So then one thing led to another. I found Common Thread. I showed up at Common Thread. I saw If You're Here, You Belong on the website. I started coming. I was here about a year, and then I shared with Doug one day that this past 20 years, And that I'd never known what to do with that until I found Common Thread, because I don't fit into any other churches. I've never belonged to any church other than Common Thread. And he on the spot said, "It sounds like you want to be a minister." And I fell over backwards off the chair, rolled to a stop, and then I realized, that I just didn't know it was a possibility, and I didn't know that somebody like me could be a minister.
Mm.
Yeah, for me it's a different story. I think I've told the story before. Like, I've known since the time I was 4 years old that I wanted to be in ministry, but I was Catholic, and so I couldn't do that. Spent 10 years in the Episcopal Church, kind of working on discerning a call in my 20s, and for various reasons the time wasn't right, and I put it on the shelf. And coming to Common Thread was sort of this culmination of spiritual growth in my life, things that I couldn't make sense of anymore, but also answering this deep, deep yearning that's in my heart. I forget who the theologian is that Doug has quoted before, who says, if you can do anything other than ministry, go do that, because if it's not the life for you, it will kill you. But if it is the life for you, nothing else will fulfill you. And so I just feel this, all the things I've done in my life, all the skill sets that I have been able to employ in other contexts, being able to employ them here is such a deep, deep joy. And I think what being a minister is, honestly, is very closely aligned with what being a midwife. Being a midwife, right? Because everybody's got what they have and need inside them, and it's really just our job to kind of be there and support and serve and love and help people access that deep, deep indwelling divine, and listen to that small, still voice.
That's funny because towards the end of my career, I started also doing teacher training, which was great because, again, it was in the basement of churches. So no one was really paying attention to what I was doing. So in the teacher training, the first thing we did in the first week was create these posters where we would draw a picture of ourselves, and then we would try to think of a better name for what we were going to do in these roles, and the group always came up with midwife.
Yeah.
So we decided that if you're going to do this kind of work, we have to have the right label, and
Yeah, that's cool. It occurs to me that, like, you're relating it back to, like, this deeply human experience. Like, it's like coming along people in their humanity.
Yeah.
Like, and so, like, because when I think about having a baby, it's like one of the most deeply human things that happens.
Yeah.
And or like being a refugee, like trying to, like, really, how do I fit into this place? And I think a lot of us, at least I felt growing up, it's just like, what is this world? And I wanted some sense of somebody to walk with me in that process. And so that's what a minister is for you guys. Like, that's what you're trying to do. But I think, like, ordination, there's an idea where, like, the community, and I think Doug was pretty clear with that when he set it up. It's like, well, this is our commitment to you guys as well. And so, like, what does ordination mean to you guys from a receiving standpoint? Because I think that was an interesting point that you made, where you were like, okay, well, before I was teaching and I was experiencing this sense of, like, midwifing, like, but I wasn't getting back in the way that I needed to. I didn't feel like I could, like, ask them to give me anything back. And so what is ordination from that perspective? Like, what are you wanting from ordination, I guess?
Well, in terms of the community, I think last year it was really powerful to stand there and have this community be there and supporting us in this. Yes, we are here with you. We are calling you. We are in this together. I think in a lot of churches, most of them, there is this hierarchy, right? You've got the minister, and the minister's got the goods, whether it's I know what the Bible means, and I can tell you, and I have the answers, or I have the sacraments, and you can't get to God without me. And we are literally all in this together. We're at a fraternal level, which is kind of that new imagining that I have. This is we don't have it anything, other than a particular heart and a particular presence that we can bring to the community, and the community's right there with us. And I think that ministers in other congregations probably get burned out in different ways because they're on this pedestal and the community can't really be there and be human for them in a way that is absolutely the case here. And I'm just thrilled with it.
Yeah, the first year I was doing the internship that Doug had talked about, every week I would ask him, draw me a pie chart and show me in the pie chart what you do all week. Like how much of your time is devoted. I mean, I'm a counter 5.
Yeah.
I'm in my head. Show me a pie chart is my response to most things in life. And slowly over then the last 3 years, I'm starting to realize that there, along with a lot of other things, that there are these two main pieces. And one is, like running the show, so to speak, like creating, as Jack, you have come to say, creating the experience, hosting the experience for others, and then bearing witness to that experience for others. And there's a lot that goes into that. The right paintings, the right lighting. But then the piece that I started realizing from looking at the pie chart, a lot of it is waiting to be asked to come alongside. And waiting to be given space to come alongside. So a lot of it is waiting to be needed. And some of, I think, what happens for other people is knowing that you're waiting. Sometimes then they don't need more than the seamless experience that's created. So that was the piece that was missing for me. Like it was, what am I supposed to do? Because the center, the heart of my teaching ethos is, you can't teach anybody anything they don't already know. So I have to just create an experience where people find out what they already know, realize what they want to know, and then there I was as a teacher. How did that relate to being a minister? And over the last 3 years, I think I've seen that. And maybe, and I've never seen any other community. So maybe our experience here is the best possible version of these experiences, because it does sort of feel like we're here, we're meant to be here, we're meant to wait. And if we're needed and when we're needed, we're called, and then we show up.
So like you see ordination as almost like what I'm hearing is like a recognition of like what's happening. Like like this unfolding, like there's some intentionality. You said, okay, I want to do this, but then ultimately it's like, well, is it happening? And ordination says, yes, it is. We say yes. We come alongside you and affirm the work that you're doing. That makes a lot of sense. Let's see. What has surprised you this last year? Like, what do you think? Because it's not like you came into this cold. But like, what has been there's the difference between what you thought you were going to experience and then what you actually experienced? What's the biggest shift in expectations or?
Well, Doug calls it the scut work. I remember at the beginning he said, what do you want to do? I'm offering you this internship. What do you want to do? Do you want to do scut work? And I said, what is that? Like, what is it going to consist of? It's like being an event planner, a communications expert, a registrar. And then slowly over time realizing it's not scut work. That was what we were. If you don't do those things, you can't create the experience in which the transformation can happen. And it is a lot of work.
That was surprising to you.
Well, how do you balance the two? Like, one thing I've always wondered about therapists, like, can you have a client back to back to back to back, and you just go from so it's not. Recently, the three of us have started being part of this group where on Sunday mornings we get here really early, we turn on the lights, we turn on the heat, we drag the chairs into place, and that's the way it was for a long time. And then we had this idea of then stopping and having a 20-minute meeting where we say, why are we doing this? What is this for? What's the bigger purpose?
Yeah.
Right.
And so it's hard. I find it's hard to balance the two. You can get really caught up in wanting to think of it as a show and as a performance. And then how do you both do those things, make sure they get done, but also remember what's the point of it all so that it doesn't become, what's that thing about the hand pointing at the moon? in Buddhism, people say it can be a mistake. Instead of looking at the moon, you can start looking at the hand that's pointing at the moon.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's been an interesting insight for me.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I think the biggest surprise for me is I think I've been surprised at how hard it is to take time off to actually Sabbath. I put that on Slack today. It's part of it is I've talked with my therapist about it. As a matter of fact, he's like, "Why? Is it because you just love it so much?" I think that's I'm like, I think that's part of it, and it's sort of this inner drive. And I know it's not good because you have to Sabbath, especially if you're going to be in working in a spiritual context. It's critically important to one's growth, and so I found that to be surprisingly challenging because there are so many things to do, and I bring this 8 energy to things, and I want to get stuff done, and making sure that I'm carving out that time to be quiet and present for a whole day. I do it every day, and I'm pretty successful doing it on a daily basis, but to set the work aside has been just a little bit more challenging than I expected. It's a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah, I want to hear you talk more about Sabbath, because what you're talking about is like you come into the community and you hear the rhetoric that talks about resting, slowing down. It's everything is what is good. Like we don't need to change things in order for them to be better, and then you wind up doing the work of ministry, and you're like, oh my God, this is like a full-time production. It can feel like, right? And it's just so weird. It's just like trying to think of all the little things. But I think that's something I've really come to appreciate about you, Heather, is the way that the innocence to this process that you bring. Because like I think like me growing up in church, like I was like, yeah, church is all work and no fun. And it's you do it because it's your duty to God, and it's not about you, and it's not about like getting anything or healing or anything like that. It's about doing what God wants. I really appreciate that perspective that you bring, where you're just like, oh wow, this is hard, and it's like that's awesome to have that be a surprise, honestly. And I think that's a real gift that you bring to the table of like not expecting that that's the case, like thinking like that. Yeah, I just love that, because even in your answer, you're like, well, I knew that was going to be hard, and I jumped into the whole thing. So
then I had to take myself, and I'm like, oh. Yeah.
But I would like to hear you used a word, a $10 word or whatever, Sabbath. What is Sabbath? Like that's a loaded word maybe as well.
Yeah, it is.
So what does that mean to you when you say that in this positive? It sounds pretty positive what you're talking about.
Yeah. Really rest and restoration. And I've discovered I have to take myself out of the context of where I'm doing so much work, which is a little harder these days because we do so much work from home. So my office is at home. So it's like, I can't stay home because I'm going to feel that call to go in there and do things. So Sabbath is really just being able to shift gears and be in a different space for renewal and restoration. Mm-hmm. And so I'm learning what works for me. I need to get out of the house. Hiking is a really good thing. It's been so cold. It's been hard for me lately, but hiking and just being in nature is a really good thing. Sometimes I'll go to the chapel at St. Francis because it's a different kind of space and an environment that's different than here, where I can, kind of shifts things for me a little bit, shakes things up, and I can just kind of sit there and be quiet for 10, 15 minutes. Reading books that aren't necessarily connected to my work now, because there's so many things that I've been reading and watching, and I haven't read a novel in years, and so I just picked one up, and it has nothing to do with anything. And again, just kind of taking myself out of what the usual thing is, because the rest is important, the restoration is important, the spiritual growth, and you don't get new perspectives if you don't change things up. It's very easy to kind of get stuck in have some tunnel vision and not be able to gain those perspectives. So doing that at least once a week is important. And I think it's going to be important as we move along, and we will have 3 ministers here to figure out schedules that we can each take longer chunks of time throughout the year too, when we know we've got each other covered, because that's important as well. Whether that's quarterly or twice a year or something, like we can just take some time away, like Doug just did, because it's really important.
Listening to you speak, I finally have a name for something that's been going on. So there's the external Sabbath. Mm-hmm. And create, find hiking and finding spaces to be in. And then there's kind of an internal one that this year is really coming to focus. You can't enter into an experience like this and embrace it so fully without it having kind of a series of dominoes falling internally.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's not just that my days have changed in the last few years because this has become my new my vocation. Everything has changed on the inside as well, and so I've had to grapple with that. All of my relationships have changed. Me too. I have a therapist.
Mm-hmm.
I have a spiritual director.
Mm-hmm.
Those things come to conclusions. They come to insights that then both change the internal world as well as the external world. So it's a constant unfolding, and how to make space for that and hang on to the original vision, because it's adapting, and not to get too fixed to holding on to the original vision.
Remember, like in the spiritual life, at least this is where I come from, God is ever growing and changing. There's always new arisings and new unfoldings, and we have to be willing to ride with them instead of like deciding this is how it's going to be. And Sabbath helps you do that, helps you get grounded and be able to ride.
Yeah, it challenges you either on the one hand of bringing you deeper into like an envisioning of the work that needs to be done, or the rest of it has to happen, right? This goes well into, so I think it's easy when you look at like leadership, and especially we live in a context where it's like we think very corporately or structurally a lot, in these like these structures that we create and kind of plug people into, and so it's like you're the pastor, you're the leader, you're responsible for these certain things. This is a community that is trying to figure out what it is to be human, and so then we have like, you know, like in my body, it's like there's no part of my body that does everything, right? Like my brain might make the executive decisions, but then it gets so much support from the rest of it, right? And so like I think what I would like to know, like something I'd be interested in, is some practical, maybe let's start with like your theoretical vision of like what it looks like for a community to work together. Like you guys can't do it all. You and Doug and you guys and Doug can't do everything, right? And so we have a lot of volunteers, and how has like this process of ordination and being like kind of super volunteers, like what perspective has that given you on like your just average common thread participant? Like what do you want them to know about their part to play in this community? And
well, and I think that this is really what it comes down to. Like we are a community, and everybody has a part, and our job really is to support and hold people up and empower and all of that. I've looked personally at the contemplative retreat as like a microcosm of what this community does and can do even better going into the future, which is, you know, sure, from a leadership perspective, I had an idea and I, came up with what we were going to do, but then immediately kind of went to all of the people who needed to make it happen to see, can you take this on? Can you take this on? And the beauty of it, you know, I think if a minister is kind of doing his or her role, or their role well, you almost don't necessarily even see them that much, because life is coming, it's percolating all over the place, and you're really just facilitating what's happening. And so on the day of the contemplative retreat, you know, I had very little to do once we got there, but my goodness, this community, you know, stepped up to the plate and made things happen here, there, and everywhere. And this community can continue to thrive in that direction, I think, if we continue to fill the role that way.
And I'm having, when I moved down to the teen room in October, I'm having now the same experience. I stood up, last 48 hours ago or so? I can't remember when it was, but I very recently asked the community to come down to the teen room and help me create this bridge so that, God willing, the teens will walk across it when they learn how to drive and can be anywhere they want to be on a Sunday morning, that they come upstairs instead of leaving the church. And now we're booked out through April. Like all I had to do was to put it out there that I needed it. And now, like, I'm actually having to say people, I don't have a spot till May. But yeah, it's, and again, for me too, it circles back to when I was a teacher for so long. My feeling by the end of all that time was you create a structure and then you step away. And if you've created the structure and if you step away, people will do it for themselves and they will have a more transformative experience if that happens. So it's hard to build the structure. We talked about that. It's kind of also hard to then step away. Like recently I asked Doug, what would it look like if we had a lay-led participatory experience at church? Because I've never been to any church other than this one. And we're playing with it. We've been kind of playing with it. We've been doing the community intentions. We do the housekeeping. Is it just that it takes the pressure off the leaders, or do the people have a better experience? And I think we're seeing that, like you saw at the Contemplative Retreat, they have a better experience. It's more transformative. It's deeper.
Yeah, that's awesome. What are, specifically though, to bring it back to you guys specifically, what are the areas in which you find yourself needing like support in a general way, like that the community can know about you, like this is how I can always come alongside this person in this way, like because I think there's I've been in ministry or church groups for my whole life, right? And something that I often notice is that the leaders create the container for the people to have these spiritual experiences, and then they don't participate at all. They do not have the experience that they're providing for these other people. And part of that is just a lack of vulnerability or something like that. So what is a way that we can come alongside of you guys and support you in the process of supporting us?
Well, I think we are well positioned to do it, having come up through this community already and already having really strong relationships and being a part of this community. It's not like somebody went out and found us from somewhere and is dropping us in, which is typically what happens in other churches. And so I feel to just continue these friendships and these relationships. I'm very open and honest with people about what's going on in my life. I think that's really important, not to put up some kind of facade that you're tough and you've got it all together, because who does? And I already feel very, very loved, beloved even in this community, and it's really such a gift.
That's awesome.
And this is why this is why I'm grateful that we have the self-awareness program and we have the Enneagram, because Sue's an 8, I'm a counter 5, Doug is an 8, counter 8, so he leans into his 9. Jack, you're the poster child for a 4. Like I think a lot about the people at our church and the stories I hear and the needs and experiences. And a lot of that I need to do off by myself. I mean, I'm still a 5. I need to crawl back into my cave and contemplate. I mean, one thing I've learned over the last couple of years is I was a born contemplative. I was a contemplative by the time I was 2. And so one of the things that I think we need as people who want to be in these positions is to be known and accepted as a part of the community. So I think everybody knows at this point that you're an 8, you're going to get the stuff done, and that's why you need that Monday to be Sabbath. I'm a counter 5. I am going to sometimes show up. I'm going to buzz around. I'm going to enjoy that, and then I'm going to retreat. But what I'm doing as I'm retreating is I'm contemplating, and then I'll come back. It's wonderful to be part of a community where, like you said, instead of being picked and dropped into a slot, we're not only homegrown, but we get to be a part of the community in a way in which our needs and our particular capacities that we bring get not only accepted and recognized, but we get help with those things. Yeah. We get seen.
Yeah.
So like for you, it's almost just the affirmation that like it's okay if it's okay with us if we can't get a hold of you for 3 days because you're busy like dealing with
and we have the language in this community to say what's going on. And I don't think that's super common in a church community. It's true.
Yeah, I really hope that we can have human leaders that would be ideal.
Yeah,
In
yes.
this community.
Yeah, I think
Yeah. In a community that's trying to learn how to be human,
Exactly.
we would have human leaders.
Well, no problem there.
Well, this has been a great conversation. Is there anything that you guys want to add, or?
Well, I just thank you, love you, community. Live streamers are seeing this first, but other people have a chance to catch this video, and just what an honor and a privilege. And yeah, this is like I said, a lifelong thing on my heart that's finally coming forth, and I just couldn't imagine a better group of people amongst whom I can do this. So
Yeah, same. All of the various disjointed parts of my life have come together finally in a way that offers me joy, the possibility of joy, and to be able to have that joy and to experience it in front of and share it with others is life-changing.
Well, I've been coming here for 5 years, and when one of the first Sundays I came, Doug talked about, I've got to replace myself. Will we escape the founder's trap? And I think I can speak for a good number of us in the community that, like, you guys, your ordination is a big step in that direction. And, like, really, as a person who's now at this point, like, invested a lot of my time and money into this community, I feel better about the future because you guys have made this commitment to us, and the commitment that we as a community are making to you is, yeah.
Thank you, Jack.
thank you. Thank you so
Wow.
much.
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome.
My voice is not very strong today. So kids, you are going to stay for just a little bit of the song so that you can play your kazoo if you have one. But then when you see me going like this in a little bit, that means come with me, okay? So I'm going to wave you down and you can follow me downstairs. Kids, teens are going to stay for a little bit. If you have a kazoo, children, please leave them with your grown-ups, okay? We're not going to take those downstairs today, okay?
Chicken, chicken.
Fully admit it, that's fine. All right. I think we're good.
All right. There will be a kazoo soli, so kazoos be ready. We've got you. That's right. Here we go. A 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3, 4.
Please sing with us.
A 1. Here we go. Oh, when the saints go marching in. Oh, when the saints go marching in. Oh, I want to be in that number when the saints go marching in. And when the sun begins to shine, oh, when the sun begins to shine, oh, I want to be in that number when the sun go marching in. Oh, when the trumpet sounds its call. Oh, when the trumpet sounds its call. Oh, I want to be in that number when the saints go marching in. Oh, when the new world is revealed. Oh, when the new world is revealed. Oh, I want to be in that number when the saints go marching in. Oh, when the drums begin to bang. Oh, when the drums begin to bang. There you go, there it is. Oh, I want to be in that number when the drums go marching. All right, kazoos, you're up. Here we go. Bum, bum. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. Bum, bum, bum. Wah, 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 wah. Wah, 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 wah. When the stars fall. Oh, when the stars fall from the sky. Oh, when the stars fall from the sky. Oh, I want to be in that number when the saints go marching. Key change, here we go. Oh, when the saints go marching in. Oh, when the saints go marching in. Oh, I want to be in that number when the saints go marching in.
We move these now or not? Not yet. All right. Well, good morning again. Good morning again, and welcome to a special service today. Today, after spending almost a year trying out and test driving this ministerial life, today we ordain Heather and Sue. It's a day we mark their entry into lives given in service to, caring for, supporting, and strengthening spiritual community. So it's a special day, the kind of day we mark, the kind of day to which we assign meaning and purpose. That's why we do ceremonies. That's why we do rituals, to mark the important times in our lives, and in so doing, by doing it together, to strengthen community by sharing them together. Sometimes our rituals mark and our rituals help us channel times of sorrow. But other times, like today, our rituals help us mark and channel joy and gratitude and pride. So welcome. I am very glad you're here. Now, before we begin, I'd like to give you some background for what we're going to do together today. Today, we'll follow a pattern that our community has been following for a long time, so I want you to know the pattern. We figured out way back when we were starting Common Thread that American religion had lost its way, and a lot of good people think it has lost its way so badly that in good conscience, the only thing they can do is leave and walk away, and that is really understandable. I understand why people do that. But it's not the path that we have taken. 28 years ago, we decided to stay within the context and try to explore how it happened that religion lost its way, and try and find out if we could find beauty in the ruins. So to do that, this has been our pattern. We find some ugly thing in our religion, some lost our way thing, and then we take that thing and we strip it down, we strip it down, we strip it down, we strip it down, we strip it down until we get to the kernel of goodness that was there before we lost our way, back when the ugly thing was actually a beautiful thing. We try and figure out why it was a beautiful thing, and then try to rebuild on the beauty of the thing, the useful thing, the helpful thing. That's what we're doing today. Actually, it's what I did to get ready for today, because I did the deconstructing and reconstructing thing that we do for this ceremony. I studied a lot about ordination. I studied the why and the how, the reasons behind it. I stripped the practices down, found beauty at the center, rebuilt today's ceremony on that beauty. And that's what we're going to do together today. So again, I am very glad you're here. I'm glad you're here in the room. I assume the live stream has come on now. I'm very glad that you all are joining us online. Now, we haven't started yet. We've got two important things that we need to do first. First, Joe, come up and remind us, yet again, that we are, every one of us, carriers of the indwelling divine. Let's sing together.
Let's sing together. We are one. We are one. We are all one in God. We are love. We are love. We are all the love of God. Beauty surrounds me, falling at my feet, as I hear the calling of the Holy One in me. We are whole, we are whole, we are all the wholeness of God. We are strength, we are strength, we are all the strength of God. Beauty surrounds me, falling at my feet, as I hear the calling of the Holy One in me. We are made. We are made. We are made. We are made. We are all made of God. We are one. We are one. We are one. We are one. We are all one in God. We are. 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 We are.
The second thing that we need to do before we begin is to remind us where we are, which is where we have been. So almost a year ago, we had part one of today's ceremony. We stood together, the ordinance and the community, and we, the community, we made pledges to them. We pledged because we believe they are a fit for lives of ministry, to encourage them, to affirm them, to learn with them, to support them, help them discern this year if this is the life for them. And best that I can tell, I think we've done a pretty good job of keeping our pledges to them. And then I saw this morning, Sue posted as much, said we've done a kick-ass job of supporting them. So we said then, a year ago, that we would, a year from now, which is now, we would gather again, or at least we hoped that we would, and at that ceremony, they then would make pledges to us, the community. But first, a year to not enter this life lightly, a year to consider and to weigh and to test drive and to discern. So I told them this is our fourth ordination process, but today, right now, is only our second ceremony. And that's because those other times did what the process is actually designed to do. With the time to consider, is this the life for me? Those candidates discerned, no, it really isn't. So good on the process. Because if this is not the life for you, it will crush you. But if it is the life for you, there is no life that could be more fulfilling. So a year to discern. And now we're here. We are here to affirm again that Sue and Heather, we believe, are fit, and then to receive the pledges they make to us. Now, we're going to start. We haven't started yet. We're going to start in just a second, but first, let's take a breath. Next slide. That's the one. Indwelling divine. The divine that is in Heather and Sue, the divine that is in each of us, source of all that is, source of all truth and of all beauty. Together, we hold in our hearts the joy and gratitude and hope as Heather and Sue start this journey, start these lives. And we invite upon them wisdom and discernment and courage and compassion and humility and resilience. And may their service ignite in us and in the world that we all create each day transformation, healing, justice, and love. Amen. We haven't started yet. Okay, Maria, it's time. Now we've started. So Drew is going to come up now and frame what we do today in the context of ancient spiritual wisdom. And after that, Christy will come up and remind us where we have been and where we go today. Drew, come first. That's the mic.
This is tricky. Testing. Down. There we go. All right. There we go. From the Christian tradition, you are the light of the world, so let your light shine. Let us see your good works. Let us see in you the glory of the divine. From the Jewish tradition, he has told you what the divine requires. Do justice, love mercy, walk humbly. From the Hindu scriptures, the one who is not envious, the friend to all living entities, the one free from false ego, the one tolerant and self-controlled, engaged in service, the one whose mind is fixed on the divine, the one is devoted.
Okay, Christy.
Last year, we affirmed these words together. We believe Heather and Sue are fit for lives of ministry. Sue is kind, compassionate, big-hearted, authentic. Heather is uplifting, studied, experienced. She lifts up. Heather is compassionate. When she speaks, we hear love. Sue is authentic. When she speaks, we hear truth. Sue is wisdom and grace. Heather is wisdom and generosity. Heather is dedicated to lifelong learning. Sue is dedicated to deep and abiding spirituality. And during this year, our perceptions of these qualities have only deepened. Our conviction has only grown. They are fit for lives of ministry. We more deeply affirm our recommendation last year. Heather and Sue are fit for lives of ministry.
Besides affirming Sue and Heather are fit for this kind of life, this year has also clarified more what their lives of ministry will look like. Not the final picture, to be sure, but a pretty good compass bearing. I think we can be confident in this. We have seen in Sue this year her deep passion for contemplative practice, for speaking, for organizing us, for leading us. We have seen in Heather this year her deep passion for tending our souls, the thing churches often call pastoral care. We will not be calling it that. For our adults, for our teenagers, also for integrating with both our adults and our teenagers spirituality and learning theory. So we're toying with titles, so don't hold us to these, but I think they're pretty close. For Heather's role, Minister of Spiritual Formation and Teen Minister. For Sue's role, Contemplative Practice, Minister of Contemplative Practice and Executive Minister. Heather has a passion for integrating together her experience over 20 years teaching adults and integrating that experience with the tools and the content of how souls grow. How do we integrate those? So I can't wait to see how she strengthens our practice of the learning quadrant. Sue's passion for contemplative practice has already created spaces where we are better living out the contemplative quadrant. And while I was away in January, it was clear that Sue's experience as a school headmaster and as a COO of a company has been fundamentally changing my life as she takes on more and more of the organizational and the operational aspects of what it means to be a community. But Heather also loves speaking, and Sue also loves spiritual formation. So, working titles, that's what we've got. They're pretty close, but I bet they will morph over time. Slide. So together today, this is called the Declaration of Ordination. Are you ready? So together today, we, the community, confirm what we believed a year ago. Without reservation, we recommend Heather and Sue to lives of ministry, and please say with me, hear, hear. Hear, hear. I also said a year ago, having made pledges to Sue and Heather, today we would receive pledges from them. Both have read today's pledges. Both are making all the pledges read today. So they're going to alternate reading, but they are both making all of these pledges to us. Heather and Sue, come on up, and Sue, you go first.
As you have asked of us, we pledge today to listen for the inner voice in our own lives and in our leadership.
We endorse you in your pledges.
As you have asked of us, we pledge to love our community, to love you, even when you're pissy and difficult. We further pledge to grow more deeply in our capacity to love all people, especially the hard ones.
We endorse you in your pledges.
As you have asked of us, we pledge to be lifelong learners of wisdom, both ancient and contemporary, and to practice contemplation and service, taking seriously our own commitment to working the circle.
We endorse you in your pledges.
As you have supported us this year, we pledge to support you as well. As you have helped us discern direction in our lives, we pledge the same to you. As you have learned with us, we pledge to learn with you. As you have held us in your hearts, encouraged us, we pledge the same for you.
We endorse you in your pledges. I did this once. long time ago. And when I did, there was a feature embedded in the system of that group. After a year, Denise could be ordained without going through the process. Now, Denise wasn't interested, and I'm not even sure it's a good idea, but what it did highlight is that our families are deeply involved in the pledges that we make around life and around ministry. So I offered Sue and Heather this moment to speak to their loved ones, to say a few words, after which, loved ones, you'll come up for the next part. So, who's going first?
I want to thank Henry for teaching me how to receive unconditional love. From the day I got him, I've received a daily lesson in radical acceptance. It's been like watching a beautiful butterfly land on my hand and knowing that all I could do is hold still and keep my eyes wide open. His love for me has taught me everything I need to know about loving the other and has brought me to this day. I want to thank Levi for teaching me how to give unconditional love. From the day I got him, I've been learning a lesson about care, how everything that is good begins and ends with caring for the other as I want to be cared for. Because we can't truly love anyone more or differently than we can love ourselves. Giving my heart to Levi has taught me to be courageous in love and has brought me to this day. I want to thank Cameron for asking me to let him love me. Almost from the day we met, we've been devoted to this family we've created, from which so much beauty and good have come. Without this family, I wouldn't be here today because I didn't know who I could be until I learned what it felt like to be beloved. And Cameron is the heart and soul of our family and the one who has brought me to this day. Thank you.
Although there is no way she would be here today, I can't not express my most profound gratitude to my mother, Barbara, the one who first cultivated the love for God in me that is overflowing in this moment. For reasons you all could probably guess, her prayers for me the past 5 years or so have been, I suspect, more fervent than the 50 that came before them. And I don't doubt that they have, in their way, borne fruit here, just not in the way she hoped. But the Spirit blows where it will, and my heart is filled with undying gratitude and love for her. My sons, Matt and James, are here today. You guys were my first teachers in deconstruction, challenging me when, in my fearful and constricted view, I tried to rationally convince you that the doctrines you'd been taught were more important than the still small voice inside of you. You confronted me in my inconsistencies, and then you encouraged, supported, and loved me wholeheartedly as I moved into a life of deeper integrity and authenticity. The divine in each of you is so clear to me, and I love you more than you will ever know. Thank you for coming to your mom's weird little church today. I know you have a Super Bowl party to plan for. And Maria, you are my partner on this sacred journey in every way. We said right out of the gate that we weren't interested in marriage or any kind of relationship if it wasn't going to be for the sake of spiritual growth. And I don't think we really knew what we were getting into. But here we are. And I literally would not be here if it were not for you. Supporting me, sacrificing for me, teaching me, challenging me, bearing me up, praying with me, learning with me, chanting with me, giving me opportunities to grow in love, and just loving me like no one ever has. This community gets you in a new role right alongside me. They will continue to benefit from your leadership and be blessed by your love, and they would no doubt agree with me when I say they are pretty damn lucky to have you, as am I.
Hear, hear.
Thank you, Jesus, and eternal love and gratitude to you all.
This part's known as the Declaration of Ordinance. So Maria, come up. Cameron, come up. Stand beside. On behalf of this community, and in accordance with a long and storied spiritual tradition, Heather Lee Luden, Susan Page Kemple, we declare you today ordained. We entrust to you spiritual leadership, and we trust you to carry out your duties with integrity and compassion and wisdom, and may you be carriers of light, helping us on our spiritual journeys. Now, it has long been the way of these things for the old guard, that would be me, to lay their hands on the new guard. It's been a symbol of continuity, a symbol of carrying the spiritual tradition across the generations. It's a symbol of welcoming and authorizing newly emerging leaders. So I asked if they were cool with me laying my grubby hands on their heads. And they said yes. So here's what we're going to do. Heather, you stand right there facing me. Cameron, you put your hand on her shoulder. It's weird. So, inner light, indwelling divine, may Heather be a blessing, and may Heather be blessed, and may she serve with wisdom and compassion. May she serve with the authorization that comes from the role given her. Amen. You stand right there. Put your hand on her. And the same, Sue. May you be blessed in this role. May you be a blessing in this role. And may you serve with all the virtue that has been evoked already in your life. A life of wisdom and compassion and courage, a life of care for others. Amen. And so, we're not finished yet. As we have gone through this ordaining process, no, don't do that yet. We're almost ready. But we need Maria over there. Actually, Heather, would you do it? You got to chime us out. Give it a good whack. Now we're ordained. So let's stand up together and clap for them and say, now, you can't see the certificates that I'm going to be giving them right now, so go ahead and put this. This is what they look like. However, the ones that they're going to get have been signed. Hugs. Mm-hmm. And hugs. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, you can't see the gifts that we're going to give them. Oh, I'm sorry, you can be seated. You can't see the gifts that we're going to give them because, go ahead, next slide. Yeah, I didn't get them ordered on time. And so our ordination gift is a clerical stole. When they do weddings, when they do funerals, when they do rituals, put the stoles on as a mark of the pledges they have made to us and the mark of our trust in them. So let's applaud one more time. Say, thank you, well done. Next slide. You can be seated. You got to stay here. You can be seated. And now, Heather's going to be a clergy. Look at her. All right, Heather, lead us.
I would like to invite the Life Story Group panel to please come forward. And if you don't come forward, I know who you are, so I will come out and get you. As they sit down, we are also using this busy, happy day to form life story groups. In the last couple of years, we've found that with all of the various challenges we've faced as a community, not the least of which was a global pandemic, and then getting people to come back off of their sofas to come to church, and then moving, we have found that this tradition that was kind of the heart and the core of our community for a long time has kind of fallen away. So we've decided to ask you to focus in 2024 on making this intimate, interesting journey of a connection with the members of your community. So we have asked an ongoing life story group to come here today to talk to you a little bit about what that is, what that looks like. All right, so I am going to ask a couple hard and fast questions because one of the obstacles to doing a life story group sometimes is just the logistics. I would imagine there are two sides of this. One is the logistics, and the other is, as Doug said when he put his hand on our heads, it's weird to sit with a group of people and to tell them your story over 2 hours. So for example, in this group, we've heard stories that have ranged from about an hour to a story that lasted, I think, about 2.5 to 3 hours long. So logistics, and it's deeply weird. So before we delve into the deeply weird, maybe we could just go down the line and you could speak loudly or you could hold up fingers if you need to, about how many life story groups we've done. So before I let them answer, let me also point out that you might have noticed this already, but we're neighbors. So after a while of all of us doing life story groups separately, we suddenly realized if we're going to leave keys for each other, as it were, under the doormat, and let each other come in and out of our houses, getting keys to cars, and I think last week it was 2 cans of beans. Sorry, we should know more about each other. So we've been in a life story group, and in terms of logistics, this life story group has now been going on for, I think, for about 7 years, it feels like. It's been a while because 6 months. We're not rigid. I mean, there are weekends when we simply can't do it, so we don't. And when we do it, we generally rotate houses, and we do the life story group for a couple hours in one of our living rooms, and then we all eat dinner together. And at that point, all of the kids come to join us, and we get to also break bread at the end of the life story group. So, that said, how many life story groups in your time at Common Thread have you done?
You win, Carol.
And thinking a moment about those life story groups you've been in, and you looking out at our community, about how many people can you see out there whose life stories you're pretty well familiar with at this point, therefore?
A lot. I mean, I've so many people in this room I've been in a life story group with, and yeah.
Many fewer than Carol.
Many fewer than that.
Many fewer than Carol, but glad to get bits and pieces of many people's life stories.
The same as Lori. This is our first life story group.
So as we sit and look out, for example, can you point to some people you've been in life story groups with so we get a sense? So 2, 3, 4, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I've been in the church for about 3 years, and I would say there's a sizable number of you here today who I know when you learned to walk, where you graduated from college, what the big challenges of your lives have been, what the joys were. So that leads us to the most important question of all. So once you manage to get past logistics and you get to the deeply weird part, what would we say, being in a life story group right now, particularly as neighbors, and we call ourselves now a family because we've had this deeply weird experience for the last 7 years of being in this life story group. How does it change the spiritual journey and the spiritual life? How does it change your experience of church, knowing that the people you're doing church with are people who you've had this experience with?
So the nice thing about the Life Story group is that you are forced to be vulnerable. And so when we get together, I see them in church, I can't bullshit them basically because they know where I've been at, where I've come from. And same goes the other way. So that's how I have seen this experience.
Maybe encouraged rather than forced.
I can say the first time I did a life story and just heard about the premise, the whole idea sounded completely agonizing to me. Like they have to talk about myself for hours. Like, well, what? It's like I'd rather get a colonoscopy. But it was a deeply meaningful but challenging experience, and sharing that and hearing from others, can't help but find common connections, things that you share in common, and have this experience too of empathy as you hear a person tell their story in their own words and their struggles, and it's just deeply connecting, and for me, a very spiritual experience.
One of the reasons that my husband, hi babe, he's online, are here is because of our daughter, Sarah. And I have always kind of been an open book. Somebody asked me a question and I'm going to share. I'm going to overshare an awful lot. Sarah used to always tell me, she'd ask me a question and I would take that as a teaching moment and be able to go on and explain a lot of stuff. And then she would remind me that it was a yes or no question. So I didn't hesitate to be part of a life story group because I felt that I wanted to get to know this community that has surrounded us in this past little over a year, and to be able to share, because Tim's part of the group too, and to be able to share where we've come from. And where Sarah came from. Sarah, I think, was in a life story group with a few of you as well. To be able to share that with everyone and to get to know everyone else. And it's been very moving. It's been fun. It's, there's humor. There's shared sadness. But there is an abundance of love, and it comes out, and it's been very, very worthwhile.
I'm a 3, so I have no problem talking about myself. So that part wasn't scary. But what I've gotten from this community most in general is compassion and acceptance. And the most beautiful thing that has come from the life story groups is like true acceptance of that, where it's like you're told that every day when you come here, but you don't believe it until you experience that from these people. And so that's just been something that's been such a beautiful gift. And we're pregnant with our 4th kid, and objectively, that's a lot of children in modern society. We're not Catholic. But I'm the least concerned about bringing this child into the world because I have these people to help me raise this child. And like, we've never had family support. We've never had a community before raising our kids, and it's such a relief, honestly. And the other thing I'll share is that John and I have been together for almost 20 years. And I learned so much even from him telling his life story in the way that he told it, even though we've had every single, one of those conversations over time. So that's also been really cool to get to do it with him. In case y'all didn't know, that is my husband.
Well, I absolutely, to piggyback off of what John Rose said, every life story group I've been in, there is always at least one common thread that I found with each and every person. And I remember my first life story group, probably about 8 years ago. I was terrified of getting, in a group and telling my life story. I had some trust issues from prior church experiences, but this was just such a different experience for me. And, I love that here at Common Thread, I was talking to a couple ladies while we were eating, that sometimes you feel like you come in and people are like, how are you doing? And you're like, oh, I'm great, because that's just the response that we're conditioned to give. But I love that, I can go to any of these people and so many friends that I see out here, and if I'm not doing great, it's okay to say I'm not doing great. There's a lot of trust, a lot of love and community that is built through life story groups, and they have just become such a just treasured experience for me here in Common Thread.
I think for me, because I'm a member of this group as well, and also we're missing 2 or 3 members. 3. Jack Fry, John Mielke, and Tim, of course, is out of the state right now. For me, I think my favorite part of life story groups has been with everyone I've done them with. There's the things you know about a person, and then there's the way that they tell their story, like how they self-select, how they curate their life story, and you get to know someone in a different way, because I knew a lot of the nuts and bolts of your lives, but listening to you tell your own story also gave me a sense of who you want to be in this world, because I think none of us want to be beholden to the things that have happened to us. We all yearn to rise above both good and not so great things, to become a work of our own creation. And that's the part to me is so intimate about doing life story groups. Before we open up to questions, any of your favorite things about life story groups, like the actual act of doing one, sort of advice to give?
Nope, I can do it. So after doing my first life story group, Heather and I got home, and I was like, well, those people were never going to talk to me again, and I'm not doing that thing again. I'm never doing one again. But I immediately got a text the next day and throughout the next week that it had helped them, and that everybody in our group had really appreciated and connected with what I was saying. So if you think you have a story that nobody will want to hear, that is not true.
I would say maybe at some level you'd think it would be kind of easy to tell your own life story because it's yours. But I found great value in preparing and practicing so it comes out the way that you want it to come out. It's an opportunity to also then really reflect and think about, well, what is the story that you want to tell? And that story might not always be the same every time that you tell it.
Well, he's got a wing one, so you don't have to prepare if you don't want to. No pressure. The thing I love is that these people now are going to call me out on my shit. And, I can feel safe in that moment, right? They know what my goals and objectives are. They know when my intention is mismatched with, what my actual actions are. Carol and I had a conflict we had to work through, and I think had we not put that time and work in, we would not be where we are. And we're in a better place, and we're stronger for it because of everything we learned through this community and that hard work that we're doing.
We are a large group, and I do think that the intent is that for life story groups to be small, like 3 or 4 people, but because we tended to have spouses involved in this, and because we were in the neighborhood, we did choose to go with a larger group. Don't let that scare you. But a smaller group, you're probably going to have a little bit more intimacy with that, and probably not take 6 to 8 years to get it done because you have kids and families that you have to plan around as well.
My favorite thing about I don't know. I guess
Food.
Well, yeah, there's the food. Okay. The drink. The margaritas. Okay. we're a little festive in our group. I would just say probably just the deep friendships that, and usually after a life story group, you want to continue to meet. And I have a little group that Heather and I and 2 other ladies, we still get together and have a dinner from time to time or coffee to catch up. So it really is a nice springboard to get to know people a little deeper. Yeah.
And back to logistics. If we could also say, where have you done these? Because obviously we're neighbors. We're in the same neighborhood. Therefore, we just walk down to each other's houses. But I've done life story groups in homes, in restaurants, in cafes, here at the church, using the space. There are lots of private rooms here. Outside, sitting in the courtyard here.
Nothing more to add to that.
Online.
I've heard, I don't know, I prefer doing it in people's homes because sometimes, people's life stories, things they share are deeply personal, and, you don't want to be sitting there crying in the middle of Starbucks and, everyone's wondering what's going on over there. But I don't know, certainly a park, it doesn't have to be in someone's home,
I guess one thing I would add, we have young kids, so we try to do them where our young kids are not. Just logistically, because really, and that's kind of where the logistics sometimes really require some focus, just having a block of time that's uninterrupted to be able to focus on doing it. So,
Any questions for us? Please. So for the live stream, what keeps this from being a sort of a social group / supper club and keeps it being a spiritual group and a core of our church experience?
There is a recommended structure to it, like that you let the person have the space up. Typically you allot the 2-hour window. Not everyone takes that. Some people take longer than that. And to the extent that you prefer, you prepare. So the floor is yours for that 2-hour time period when it's your turn to do the life story. And each person can express preferences around interruptions, but generally speaking, the rule we've followed is just if you have a clarification, but not to kind of pull them off a path to ask deeper questions. You wait till the end so that they really are getting to tell their story the way that they feel compelled to do.
And 2, these groups are not long-term groups, I don't know. I know what you're talking about. These, yeah, these are seasonal. They're temporary. Say you have 4 people in a life story group, it would last 4 weeks, and each person tells their story, and then, some people choose to have food or snacks or a meal, but it's a temporary group.
One of my favorite aspects of the life story group as a spiritual experience is, and Carol said, you hold silence and you hold space for the person as they speak. You don't ask questions unless you've been given permission. And I've been in several groups where when the person is finished, we take a moment and we thank the person individually each, and we do have a couple minutes of silence afterward. And sometimes people will be moved at that point to speak to the elements of human nature and the human condition that arose from it. And at that point, sometimes it does turn into a discussion in which we draw on things that we've learned here as a church community to process what we just heard. Yes, Doug?
I've also done lots and lots of these groups, and it can be a little daunting if you think that the 2-hour time thing is an expectation. And you can do a really good life story group if you set an hour and don't plan to take that whole hour. Probably you'll take an hour. Most people think it's going to take me 20 minutes and then I'll be done. And then they get started and they try. And so you want to block an hour at least. I love that you all do 2 hours. I think that's great. But it just might be a little overwhelming to people.
More questions, please. Yes.
Is there like a definite beginning and ending? Like when you start a life story group, do you say, well, we're going to do, everybody tells their life story and then it's over, and then you go to a new group?
Exactly. You literally come together for the experience of the life story group. 3 people in the group, it lasts for 3 weeks. 4 people in the group, it lasts for 4 weeks. And at that point, the experience is finished. And so, though people may continue to revisit the experience by getting together every now and then as friends, that experience as a life story group is complete. So that we hang on to this notion of it as a core practice in our church.
And it doesn't have to be 3 weeks in a row. Like me, John, and Becky did one, and it took us like 3 months, and there were only 3 of us. Like it just was life stuff. She was traveling, I was like, so it's just, I mean, don't feel bound by that. That intimidated me. I'm like, I don't have 3 straight weeks to commit to this. And I'm like, well, it can be on my own timeline.
And that question was about how one starts, how we start, and how we end, and how we know how long to go. Thank you. Oh, one more question, and then we will start forming these groups. Please. Doug, would you like to speak to how you came up with the practice initially in the church?
When I was in graduate school, I was a whitewater rafting guide and a mountaineering guide. And that's how I made my money for tuition all year long. And when I was out on the trail with groups for anything more than 4 days, we would take every meal and we would do just exactly that. One person would share the story of their lives. What I did not realize then was that so much of the cohesion within the group, I use this phrase all the time, life story groups sow seeds of trust and affection. So that's my mantra, trust and affection, that's what happens. Well, I experienced that out on the trail with very diverse groups that would join together, coming from different places, and by the time we finished, we had trust. By the time we finished, we had affection. What I didn't know is if you could translate that into a church. Turns out you can. That was the origin.
And the second part of your question, which is how do you find these members of your life story group? We have been, as a church, playing with that quite a bit over these last couple of years. We've tried doing it online. We've tried doing it in person. We've tried kind of a bulletin board idea. And today, we're going to do it, I think, the way that it was done for years and years and years. We're going to do it in person. So here's what's going to happen. If you would stay sitting for just a second, because it's about to erupt into chaos, here's what we'll do. Sue, Doug, and myself are going to act as anchors about where Christy Phillips is sitting. Would you wave? If you are available and interested in doing a life story group Monday through Friday in the daytime, you will walk over to where Sue is standing, and in answer to your question, she will sort of partition you off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, because the last thing we want this to do and to feel like is to be and to look like and to feel like a clique. That is not what we do when we do life story groups. We more or less, as church mates, we just put ourselves into groups based on nothing more than availability. So Monday through Friday during the day, Sue will help you sort yourself into groups. If, however, you are available and interested Monday through Friday in the evening, Doug will help you to sort yourself into groups of 3 or 4 or 5. If you would like to find a life story group only available on the weekends, I will stand in the back where Sean and Becky are sitting, and I will help you sort yourself into groups of 3, 4, and 5. And it will go quickly, and if the past few years are anything to go by, it will be chaotic. So hang on to your hat. Christy.
Yeah. Yes, we're going to do drop-in self-awareness at 11:45 down the hall in room 209. And so folks on the live stream, we're going to dismiss you before we erupt into chaos here. You can also form a life story group. If you look in the notes on YouTube, click there, there's a form. You can fill out the information that will kind of gather some of that information from you, what your availability is and how you can be sorted into groups. That'll come back to Kate, yeah, and we'll get it sorted out on that end. So thank you for joining us this morning. Everybody in the room, let's go ahead and put a hand on our hearts as we dismiss our friends on the live stream, remembering that the divine indwells each one of us. And that means that the fruit of the Spirit, patience, kindness, love, forbearance, goodness, all of those things are in us, just waiting to be nurtured, cultivated, and shared with the world. And so let's extend our other hand out to our city and world beyond, looking for every opportunity this week to share what is within us with the people with whom we work, we live, we go to school, everyone we encounter, as we take seriously our commitment and pledge as a community to be healers and repairers of our world. Amen.
You did that with no notes.
And I knew what to do. I didn't have to look at you. I look ordained. Thank you.